welcome back. I'm out here in the wilderness again, and maybe one of the more dangerous places I've shot on. Frozen waterfall sounds great for an adventure, but maybe not so great for filming. So, okay, this seems like a much better place for me to shoot. I'm also probably not going to fall in. Not yet. So, in the last episode of the show, we detailed the characters, bought them all their gear, got them all set up and ready to go. We began our quest. We asked the question of, what exactly are the goblins up to? Are they currently doing it? And what's going on there? Unfortunately, we found out that the goblins are part of some strange, evil cult where they're worshipping sickness through the goblin god Bebet. They've decided to take their quest, the goblin quest, to the Elvish Tower, the tavern there in Validar. And within this tavern, they decided that they would drop a pot of strange paste and goo full of contaminants to make everybody sick with a horrible disease. And unfortunately for them, the party intervened at the exact right time. And even though we lost Taya, our fighter, in that first instance of combat, the day was won and the party were successful in stopping the goblins from completing their act of getting everything all gross. Now, our party are on the move trying to figure out what to do next. They met with the mayor, Thaman, in order to figure out what could be done next, and he reveals to them some rumors about a dungeon to the east, a place that's giant-sized, where he's heard rumors that the goblins may dwell there, as well as some ogre companions. We also learned a bit about the ogres, who themselves are not planning on working with the goblins for long. So, let's find out what happens next. Alright, welcome back to the basement. As you can see, there's new neon D20 with another neon D20 and illustrious mountain scene. I'm really stepping my game up. This lava lamp I don't think will ever reach a temperature at which it will lava, but that's beside the point. We've already gone over what happened in the last episode, but we still have a little bit more housekeeping to go through before we're really in the weeds and starting our quest. So, let's jump into that. First and foremost, we have to say goodbye to Taya, who, she is D-E-A-D, not D-E-D, dead. If you know, you know. We have to make a new character to join our party. I think it's only fair that our 3-person group now has a 4-person in it. So let's go ahead, let's get right into it. Let's roll up a new character for our group. Even though we're only rolling up one character, and normally I just fill it in straight down the line, in the off chance we get some crappy numbers, I don't want to have to keep erasing it. So we're going to roll it right here first. We'll see what we get, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do with them. As far as dice for the episode go, I got a new setup here. I wanted to just do a quick shout out to my old college roommate, friend of the show, Anthony, who for Christmas gave me a set of these sweet Seth Skorkowski dice. I think they were from Q Workshop, if I remember correctly. And he gave me a really cool D20 that is sort of difficult to read in these wonderfully dungeness conditions, but I figured just out of respect and thanks, I'm going to keep these ones chilling here in the bin. So, let's get rolling these dice. So, 4d6 down the line. Oh, sorry, 3d6. Who am I kidding? Alright, let's see. We've got 12 to begin. Oh, wow. Okay, 13. Again, we're gonna be doing this straight down the line using this lineup. So that's for intelligence. I know sometimes people who come to the game in later editions are used to physical stats up top and mental stats down below, but I'm just gonna fill them in according to this grid right here. Damn. I'm glad this is all on camera, because if I had to explain to you guys later on why my character is so stacked with these numbers, maybe you wouldn't believe me, but, I guess I have flubbed quite a few things in this campaign already, so I guess I'm not entirely one to trust. The big thing, this character is going to be taking over for our fighter. So, with the stats that we've got here, we don't have, the craziest fighter available. But we definitely have a fighter available, quite the vote of confidence. I think what we'll do is we'll probably implement that rule that one of our viewers had pointed out last time, where we're going to reduce some numbers in order to boost some up, because this is not a really bad array, and I think we can definitely work with it. So let's do that right now. Since we can only, according to the old school essentials rules, lower strength, intelligence, and wisdom, I think what might make sense for us is to reduce intelligence by 2, give us that sweet little 11. And reduce wisdom, I think, by 4. In this way, we've netted ourselves at least a +3. So I think what we can do with this +3 is we'll boost dexterity to a 13. And that'll give us at least a +1 bonus to our armor class, initiative, and all those wonderful things. And with the other +2, I think strength, we should bump that up to a 14. This, I think, is a pretty solid setup. I don't want to reduce wisdom too much further, but then again, you know what? Screw it. Fighters are only going to live once. Or at least, I don't know, maybe this won't be a fighter. We can do a little perusing and choose our option. I think 15 at least will look a little bit more seductive for a fighter than a 14. So let's fill that in real quick. I'll fill in all this blurby stuff. Alright, so I filled in the quick details and gave us our bonuses. Really nothing to write home about, just the +1 in melee. If we can get our strength up somehow, then at least we'll get another bonus. And our dexterity bonus gives us a +1 as well. So again, some minor bonuses that might pay off, but now it's time for us to make a choice. Now, in my mind, there's 2 routes we can go down. We can do a traditional fighter, warrior kind of thing, and play it safe and easy. But there's a part of me that thinks we might actually benefit from playing a ranger using the advanced rules. If we are to play a ranger for this character, they will not only give us a bunch of perks for outside of combat with things like tracking and getting lost and the surprise and wilderness encounters, but they're really not that far off from a fighter except for 2 things. One, they're going to get less health overall because they'll start with a D8, which, you know, not terrible, definitely going to be the highest in the group, but they also can't use the heaviest of armor, which, again, whatever. But I think to myself, this might actually be sort of an interesting thing we can try out. So I'm going to make the executive decision. Let's make ourselves a ranger. We'll do a level 1 ranger, and I will very quickly fill in some of those details. Right now, just because I got the time to roll it on camera, I'm going to roll for our wealth. Starting wealth, 3d6, and then times 10 for gold. Great. 90. Okay, so starting gold, 90 gold. I'll be right back. Now that I'm all done with my little shopping trip there, I came out with a new character, and our character's name, which I realize in retrospect sounds a lot like Tamrind, but his name, if you can read my microscopic handwriting, is Tamond. Tamond Olmar. Sure, whatever. And they have no bonuses to their saving throws. They got the bonuses I mentioned for strength and dexterity. But let's talk about how we outfitted them. With 90 gold, I didn't have a lot of options, so I got scale mail and a shield. This is probably going to be more of a melee character anyway. And they're wielding a longsword, which gives them a +1 bonus to attacks from strength and damage. And I gave them javelins as a really cheap alternative since we don't have any money. Scale mail, dexterity bonus, and a shield gives us a 4 AC. So that's pretty sweet. As far as gear goes, we're pretty limited. We couldn't even get rations, but, you know, I figure our special abilities kind of cover that. But we have the backpack, bag of chalk, grappling hook, rope, the usual. And additionally, our special abilities, which I think really makes the ranger what they are. Awareness, we're only surprised on a 1. Foraging, we get a 2 in 6 chance of that rather than the usual 1 in 6. Hunting, we get a 5 in 6. I don't even remember what the number is for that one. Limited possessions, we're not allowed to carry excess wealth. We can't just give it to a party member. We have to donate it and give it away. Whatever. Pursuit, we get a 10% bonus on that, which, you know, is assuming that comes up. And surprise attacks, we surprise on a 3 in 6, which is sweet. Okay, and then we need 2250 for our XP to get to level 2, and because of our high strength, we get a 5% bonus on XP. Cool. We have absolutely no money left to our name, which is fine. And now we get to roll for our alignment. Now, Rangers are kind of interesting in these old school games in that they're a little bit more Aragorn-y, and they're seen as protectors. So they're going to have either the lawful alignment or a neutral alignment. And I'm assuming that the way that that's written, it implies good rather than just law. So we'll give it an even 50-50 chance that we'll either be neutral or lawful. So high will be neutral, low will be lawful. So low, we are lawful. Okay, and now let's see if we're lawful stupid. Again, even split, we'll say low will be good, high will be neutral. Okay, so lawful stupid it is. Lawful good. Lawful good it is. I actually really love lawful good characters. I think that paladins are really fun to play. I just sort of assumed it was a male. I didn't roll, spin the coin or anything like that, but I figured, that's fine. I don't think anybody really cares that much. So, now that we've got this out of the way, I'm going to quickly give us our XP for our other characters real quick. So, unfortunately, goblins really only give us 5 XP apiece, and since we killed 3 in the last episode, our characters are only going to receive 5 XP each. Now, anybody who plays old school games knows that treasure for XP is definitely the quickest way to accumulate XP, and combat's really not the be-all end-all for accumulating XP in this game. I do give not milestone, but like quest complete XP and things like that, because I do feel like that also is important. I know some people do exploration XP, but I feel like that's kind of difficult to measure in a hex crawl, so I'm not bothering with that. So as of right now, they all have 5, except for one character in the group, Fennel, who is very talented with wisdom and has 6 whole experience points. So let's bring back our party members who, at this point, have stayed in the tavern for 3 days. I misspoke last time, but having stayed in the tavern for at least that extra day, the party of Fennel, the cleric, Barine, the magic user, and Zion, the sneak, are staying at the Elvish Tower Tavern. They stayed here for a few days. I sort of decided that they're probably not going to pawn off all of Taya's stuff. I imagine that they'll at least sell the clothing that she had been wearing, I guess, the bloody clothing, and probably traded it for a couple more days at the tavern. I'm assuming that the money they would get from selling that clothing would give them at least a few gold pieces, maybe 3 or 4 gold pieces total. So I'm thinking that that'll at least buy the party 2 more days at the tavern. So that means that the party have at least 1 more day's worth of gold to be able to spend on staying here. So I'll just go ahead and mark that in here that we have at least the 2 gold pieces left. Well, we already have 8 on here, so we'll just mark that up to 10. Cool. Okay. So now that we're all situated on that front, I don't think we really need to roll too much for Tamond joining the group. So join me on the big camera. Let's discuss what happens next. Our party is formed, and now it's time for us to get moving on this quest. It's time for us to do a little bit more of our bookkeeping, and then we'll jump right into exploring to the east. So before we jump into that, let's go look at my computer. Alright, so we're back in the trusty Google Doc that I have with all of my notes for my solo adventures here, but I wanted to talk briefly about time in the campaign setting, since it's going to be integral to documenting what's going on in the campaign that we're doing here. So to begin with, I figured that I would start off this project with a 360-day year. I feel like that just makes life a lot easier to have a nice balanced number for this. Each of the seasons, 4 of them in total, are going to be 90 days each. I decided that I would break each of the seasons into halves, breaking them into 45-day halves, both a waxing and a waning period. The first season, bear, as into like bear child or bear fruit, etc., would be for spring, zeal for summer, full of growth and aspiration, harvest for the fall, and hearth for the winter. I figured this all made sense, and I know it's not really revolutionary, but I figure it does enough to add some interest to the campaign. This is a quick preview of how I'm going to be recording the individual sessions, and I just sort of document the date and give some rough details on what happened in our last game. This is just going to be more for me, but it gives you an idea of how I can record this sort of thing and how others might record similar projects. So let's go ahead and get cranking on making the notes for session 2. Because the party stayed at the tavern for a few days, I'm going to go ahead and mark that it's the 5th day. And I'll get rid of all this copy-paste nonsense. All right, perfect. So let's get cracking. Travel in old school games can be a little bit convoluted and a little bit tricky. So let's kind of walk through this. First and foremost, this is supposed to be a DM screen, but for some reason when I ordered it, I got it as individual pages. I guess I was supposed to assemble a DM screen out of it. Whatever. It works pretty well as these individual sheets, all things being equal. So first things first, our characters, because they are encumbered and not over encumbered, can travel 12 miles per day. Okay, so let's go ahead and put that right there. The total distance from the dungeon is 12 miles because we have to travel 6 miles to the hills and 6 miles to the plains beyond the hills where the dungeon is. I'm going to say that the mayor gave us a pretty detailed description of where it is, so we'll probably have a good idea of all that. So I don't have to roll a crazy number to be able to actually find the place. So since we're usually moving 12 miles per day, if you look right here where it says movement through hills makes us 33% slower, we're going to travel 9 miles in a day when we're traveling through our actual hills here. Because there's no road. If there was a road, we'd move 50% faster, and that makes life a lot easier in a game like this. Next thing I want to check on, this is assuming everything goes well. The next thing we're going to have to check on is losing direction, which in the case of hills, we have a 2 in 6 chance. Okay, cool. Unfortunately, with a ranger, we're not guaranteed to not get lost, which kind of sucks. We do have the ability to forage while we're traveling, so we can at least roll d6 for that, just to see if we find anything. So let's go ahead and, at the very least, roll to see if we get lost. So a 2 in 6 in the hills gets us lost. Alright, so let's see if Tamond is able to help us out here. A 6, so no, we are not lost. Cool, a great start. So now let's go ahead and roll another one. A 1 or a 2 gives us food for the day through foraging. A 6 again. You know, if this was combat and we were rolling damage, I'd love it, but unfortunately, Tamond isn't able to scrounge up anything on our trek to eat. Now here comes a very ugly problem we might run into. The hills have a 2 in 6 chance of a wandering encounter. So let's roll and let's hope we have another 6 in our streak. I swear, sometimes this game knows that I'm doing this on video, and it's like, oh, don't get a 6. Here you go, have a 1. Okay, so we have a random encounter. Excellent, so let's run through this real quick. I'm going to keep things simple. I'm just going to go ahead and use the old school essentials guide here with the random encounters that it has. I've rolled so many random encounters, my book pretty much almost opens up to that page. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to roll for this. Because we're not technically in a settled area, I don't think, we're going to be rolling off of our hills. So for hills, here we are. So we'll get a d8 and a d20 and we'll see what we get for an encounter. This is a very fancy one. I usually don't go for a dice like this where they got the sparkles on the inside, but anyway, let's go for it. So a d8 gives us for a table 6, which is a humanoid. That could be our goblins, honestly. But, you know, again, stranger things have happened, I guess. I'm going to roll a d20 from Anthony, and hopefully Anthony's going to be smiling on us from, well, I guess from Rhode Island. And let's see, table B. So table B right here for humanoids. All right, d20, a 9. A 9 gives us, oh my god. See, this is what I'm talking about. Goblin, you cannot write this. Well, I guess you could write this. That would make a lot of sense. But totally randomly, humanoid gives us goblins. Okay, cool. And you know what? This is so reinforcing to what we've done so far in the game that for what it's worth, I kind of appreciate it, especially because we could have gotten like a freaking dragon or something, and as much as a dragon would have been so much fun for us to deal with, we're not dealing with that. Now here's where things get tricky. So number appearing here is 2d4, but number appearing right here is 6d10. So these numbers, for anybody who's uninitiated, our first number here is the number encountered in a dungeon setting. The number right here is the number encountered in the wilderness. So here's where things kind of suck. Wilderness exploration is sort of a thing that players shouldn't be doing at this low of a level because things like this will happen. And usually the assumption is like levels 1 through 3, the basic part of the game, usually you're going into a dungeon, coming out, going in, coming out. Unfortunately, our dungeon is a whole day's length away, so we run into instances like this. So let's quickly roll 6d10, and we'll see how many we got. I'm starting to really be grateful that we have our ranger in the group, because our ranger might be able to help us skirt this whole entire encounter if we can get away with not being seen. I'm going to roll 3d10, and then I'm just going to double it. Or, sorry, roll it twice. So we got 2, 4, 10 for the first one, okay? And 10 becomes 18, 22, 28 goblins encountered in the wild. Okay, so, all right, this is where things are going to get kind of scary. Having a ranger in the group means that the party will only be spotted in the surprise on their end on a 1, when normally, they're only surprised on a 1. So the party, if I roll a 1, will be surprised by the goblins. I am really praying that I don't have a total party wipe right now. Okay, 5. So they're not surprised, at the very least. We're out here roaming the hills. I'm sure we're traveling through some of these. We probably come across a large hillock, and the parties stand nestled at the top. I got the weather for the day. It's a high of 57, and it's windy. I used Don John online to do that. So it's a windy day. They're standing up there, up in the grasses, probably coming out of a copse of trees, and they're looking down, and they can see this big, giant group of goblins, all of them just strolling up the hill. So here's the chance for the party to see that they're coming up this big, giant hill and be able to duck away and hide and skirt this whole entire encounter. They will only be seen on a 1 through 3. And I'm guessing this is probably towards the end of the day. They probably are trying to find somewhere to camp out for the night. So, because goblins probably wouldn't be coming out in the sunlight since, they hate daylight. So, let's roll and see and hope that we get a 1 through 3. A 5. Okay, so this means the goblins also see the party. Now, let's see, 20% of goblin groups encountered have wolf riders. Okay, let's roll this, because if the party are not pursued by the goblin riders, we might be able to get out of here. Again, using our evasion with the ranger, that ranger's coming up a lot, we might be able to just outrun the goblins. So we have a 20% chance on a 1 or a 2, they're going to have wolves, and that will really screw our game up. Okay, 8, thank goodness. So there's no wolves to be encountered. So the party are going to be at full encounter range, since there's no surprise, and they're probably going to just make a run for it. I don't think they're going to try to take on 28 of these goblins, even though they're all a very, how do I want to say this? Confident group, I'm sure, after dealing with 3 and nearly getting killed. I don't think they're going to be attempting that right now. So the total distance right now is 46 times 10 yards. So bringing our dice down here, we have 1, 2, 3, oh boy, only 90 yards, 270 feet away. Again, could be worse, but 270 feet is not that far away. The party are definitely going to try to flee here. So let's quickly get to the evasion rules and see what we can do about that. All right. So as far as pursuit goes, if the party were to be surprised, this would be a lot more of a terrible time. But because neither side is surprised, we're going to go ahead and start rolling for our pursuit. So it says that the pursuing side's movement rate is greater than the fleeing side. Then there's a 50% chance of it catching up. But that's not the case. Both sides actually have the same rate of speed right now. So the fleeing group size is 1 to 4. And since they have a group of 28 pursuing them. So it would seem that as written, because there are 4+ pursuers, there's a 90% chance of evasion. So that kind of works out in our favor pretty well, assuming that the party are going to be rushing back into the copse of trees and back over the hills and running away. Since there's no difference in speed or anything like that, it looks like it's literally just a 90% chance. All right. So since we have a 10% chance of failure, I'm going to roll a d10. If we get a 10, or 0 rather, then the goblins are unfortunately going to catch up to the party. So let's give this a shot. 9. Okay. A little too close for comfort, but at least we know that the party are going to start making their way out of here. So as far as the rules go, they say that pretty much the party will be pursued until the enemy feels like they don't want to chase them anymore. You know what I mean? So with that in mind, I suppose with 1 success, the party are going to keep running and they're not going to be caught. So it's not that they've outrun them. Now they're just maintaining that distance of running. So as far as the goblins go, they're chasing them, I'm imagining, for any number of reasons. chance. So I don't see them not continuing the pursuit, at least for another round. And we'll see how that goes from there. So again, another 10 or 0 to get a failure. Okay, another 9. I think the game's kind of toying with me here. So after them running and not being caught, I don't think the goblins are going to be shaken off their tail. So I think what we can do is we can roll, let's say, a d4, and we'll say that that's how many rounds plus 1 that they will continue to chase after the party. So I got 2. Because the party already seemed to have a pretty decent distance from them in the first place, the fact that they keep running and aren't being caught in these next 3 rounds, hypothetically, I think the goblins would just let them go and just let the whole thing be. So let's go ahead and roll again. Okay, a 7, so that means we got 2 left. Alright. A 2, okay, so we're almost in the clear. 1 more chance for the party to get away. 9, okay, thank goodness. So, the party have successfully outrun and evaded the goblin pursuers. I'm very happy that that's the case, because I don't think they would have survived anything the goblins were planning for them. So the party escape, and they're running back to the hills. They were already, in the hills as is, but for right now, it seems like they're probably going to be heading back to Valley Dar. So with that in mind, the party are going to probably try to just head home for the evening and regroup and try it again in the morning. Because camping out here with the goblins, well, actually, you know what? I think because of the length of the trip, I think the party will just keep moving into the early evening, then probably stop somewhere in the hills, stay there, and then continue their travel. So, again, because it's 33% less movement, because they're moving through the hills, and it's 6 miles between each of these steps, the party originally get 12, now they're going down to 8 miles instead. I said 9 earlier, don't worry about that. So the party made it at least out, 8 of the way, and then they're turning back. So they're going to be somewhere in the dead set middle of the whole thing. So they're going to set up a camp for the evening, and they'll deal with that. Because the party don't have any foraged food for the day, thanks to Tammond the ranger, they're going to instead just take a trail ration, they're going to drink water from the water skins, share it around the group, and that'll be all set on that front. So the next day, let's go ahead and check what we've got for weather. Okay, I've returned from Donjon. Today's weather is cloudy. It's about 47 degrees as a high, so it's a cold, cloudy day out here in the hills. A bit misty, but again, nothing terrible so far. So the party will be able to go through the hills to the plains and get to this dungeon here. Hypothetically, if we don't get lost, if we don't get waylaid, all the good stuff. So let's go ahead and let's roll for that. First and foremost, let's at least roll to see if we get lost. So because we're in the hills, getting lost, losing our direction in the hills is again a 2 and 6. We got a 5, so nope, they're not lost. As far as foraging goes, we can forage on a 2 and 6. We got a 3, so no, unfortunately, Tammond wasn't able to come across anything good to eat. The party traveling through the hills again, because I think we're probably going to be doing a random encounter for the hills rather than for the grasslands where they'll be going into. So we have a 2 and 6 chance. Oh my goodness. Okay, we got a 1. Another random encounter. Let's see what happens. There's no chance we're going to run into goblins again, I'm sure. So we've got a D8 and a D20 that we're going to roll. Okay, so because we're in the hills, we're going to roll a D8 to see which type. We got a 2. That gives us a dragon type. Okay. This is kind of what I'm always afraid of with things like this. Is we get something really scary and wonky that's going to really f*** our game. Pardon my French. We got a 13. So a 13 is a Hydra. There's just a Hydra chilling out here in the hills. Oh my gosh. Okay. Alright. Well, let's go check out our Hydra, see if there's anything very important we need to know about the Hydra that the party are apparently going to be seeing out here in the hills. I could DM's caveat and DM's fiat rather. Yeah, DM's caveat. And we could just, negate this as a roll, but I don't think we ought to do that. We got lucky with the goblins. I think it's only fair that we test our luck with the Hydra. So the Hydra says that they get the multiple heads, as we all know, disabling the heads, as we all know, variants, blah, blah, blah. So it doesn't look like there's any fancy reasoning. Well, I mean, we've got different sizes. Okay, well, as far as the different sizes go, I think we can neglect all this until we at least see if we even have to deal with them in the first place. So let's roll just for surprise. Now remember, because we have our ranger, the chance of them being spotted is the 1 in 6 chance. For our d6 rolls for surprise, we know that the party will be gold, and the Skorkowski die will be for the Hydra. The Hydra will be surprised on a 1 through 3 because the Ranger, and the party will be surprised only on a 1. So let's see how this goes. Oh boy, so they're both surprised. Okay, so they're not going to see each other up until the final point here, which is surprising. I'm sure there's maybe between a couple of the hillocks there's probably a ditch where the thing is probably sleeping or something like that. And as the party stumble into the crevice here, they'll probably come across this thing. So let's first and foremost roll well, we did our surprise. Let's see the distance here. 1d4 times 10 yards, and that'll tell us how far away it is. Hopefully far away enough we don't have to deal with it. 2 times 10, so 60 feet away. So they're going to stumble across the little crevice here in the earth, and they're going to see the Hydra chilling down there. As soon as they stumble upon it, the thing notices them too. All the heads start reeling, and the thing gets ready for whatever it's going to do. Now, again, we have monster reaction rolls, and I think this would be an amazing opportunity for this Hydra to, for some reason, not want to come after our party and have them as a light lunch. So let's roll 2d6. Let's see what we got. We got a 4 and a 3. Now, because it's going to have a charisma modifier added onto it, let's double check, see if any party members of ours have a charisma bonus. So, Zion the Sneak has a charisma of 13, giving a +1 to reactions, which itself is pretty nice. I don't know that anybody actually has higher than that. I don't believe so. Fennell's got 11, Tamond is 9, and Breen has a 13 too. Okay, so we at least have a +1 bonus to this. So that brings us to an 8. So our 8 on this table says that it's neutral or uncertain, which usually means we have to roll again. So I suppose as far as the theater of their mind, this little narrative here, the party stumble into this crevice, they come across this creepy looking Hydra, and all the heads start swirling about as it starts to recognize the party there. The party step back, and Zion in the front sort of holds up her hands and tries to defensively duck away. So let's see what happens on the next roll. Alright, on 2d6 +1, we got 5, so 6. That means neutral and uncertain. So I imagine at this point, the Hydra's heads are all starting to really focus in on the party. Zion and the rest of the group are all slowly stepping backwards, not really moving outside the 60-foot distance we initially marked up. And we're going to roll again. +1. Got 8, 9. Ooh, 9 becomes indifferent and uninterested. So as the party tuck away around the hillock, they notice that the Hydra doesn't seem to be thumping and chasing after them in any way. It doesn't seem like it's concerned with them, and it somehow, for some reason, backs off. And the party are safe for now. Well, that's horrifying. That was quite the near miss there. Okay, duly noted. So now I suppose the party can spend the rest of their day traveling, eating their food, and making their way off into the plains where they know this dungeon is going to be. So let's start talking about how we're going to generate our dungeon. So come with me back to the big camera. Now that we've made it to what could be described as the dungeon entrance, I guess, it's time that we start talking about how we're going to make this dungeon in the first place. So dungeons being such an important part of a game like this, I think it's only fair that we create something of a procedure, or at least for this first one, with which we can make a dungeon from scratch. Now, of course, we could turn to something like Dyson Logos, and we could use one of those pre-generated maps, one of those commercial use ones, and just kind of fill it in as we go. I'm used to doing something like that. But maybe for this, we can do something a little bit different. So let's consider some of our resources, and let's also consider what we have to get done here. So I'm thinking we can use the sandbox generator for making some of the contents of the rooms. They at least have a couple breakdowns for how to set things like that up. The Old School Essentials guide here also has a few different small tables for how to set up treasure that you can find on certain levels, as well as random encounters and all that stuff. But I'm thinking too, we might have to just start getting a little creative about how we're going to set something like this up. So why don't you come back to the table with me and we'll start rolling some of this up and get something of a sketch of what this dungeon is. When we're making this dungeon, I think it's only fair that we sort of sketch out a rough idea of what we're going to be doing and then delving into it. So first and foremost, what's the purpose of this place? Now, we said it was giant-sized, and there's giants that live within it. Now, this could mean a couple different things. Perhaps this is a fort, or some sort of like redoubt that they had used for defensive purposes. It could be an outpost of some kind, or maybe it could be something more special than that. So why don't we say that this is one of three things, and then we'll roll a d3. On a 1, 2, 3. So for a 1, we'll say that this is something of a lair, right? On a 2, this is something more of an outpost. And if this is a 3, it's something special. Now, when I say special, I mean this could be something like a temple of sorts, or maybe something of like a magical lair or something. But essentially, it's just something that the giants wouldn't be using as just a lair or a hangout. So a 2, treating this as a D3, that would mean that this is a lair. So this was at least the home of some giants. Okay, so with that in mind, let's go ahead and name this place. Because it was a lair, and because it's probably for ogres, at least just because ogres are the last ones chilling here, we'll say that this is maybe, call it a keep. Yeah, so say that this is the keep of, let's come up with a good ogre name. I'm imagining ogres got a lot of K's and G's and R's and U's and M's and just blah, 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 right? So this will be the Keep of Kagrumor. Bleh. Yeah, I'll even give it umlauts just because I mean business. So the Keep of Kagrumor. Cool. Okay, so now that we've got our keep and we know that this is a lair, we're going to have to start considering things that make this a little bit... I know some people would like to be Gygaxian and just say, whatever goes, goes. But in my mind, I feel like a world like this works better when there's a little bit of a semblance of sense to this. So because we're dealing with a lair, we're going to have to consider a few different things. One, they're going to need, like a barracks, somewhere to stay, right? They're going to need defenses of some sort. They're going to need food and water. They're going to need probably something to do with their waste. And because this is a lair, and this seems to be the kind of place where they'll be staying for long periods, I think they need some sort of something considered for storage. I know that seems like a silly thing to include, but when we're building this dungeon, it makes sense that we have all these things sort of taken care of. Now, there's also going to be the leader. Let's start considering how we're going to actually make this place. Now, I've been trying to think about the best way to do this, and I think one way that I kind of wanted to experiment with is we can roll for how many floors we're going to have. I'm going to go ahead and do a D3 because I don't want this to be some mega dungeon, and what we'll do is we'll say that on a D3, if we get a 1 on a D3, it'll be a single floor. 2, it'll be a floor and a subfloor. And a 3, what we'll do is we'll say that there's a floor, a subfloor, and maybe a little floor up above that, or a second basement layer. So let's go ahead and roll that. We got a 5. Okay, so we got 3 floors to this place. So let's go ahead and give a rough outline of like the shape of this place. Now, I'm thinking it makes sense that because they're giants, they're probably not hiding. They don't seem like the kind that dig down in the earth and hide away. And because this place is out in the plains, it makes sense that maybe it's something like, a stone keep, and there's perhaps like some towers above and defensive walls and whatnot. And it'll have one floor that goes underneath into a basement-ish layer. Now we have an idea that our place is probably built up in this stone framework like this. We're going to have our little wooden palisades around the place that are probably all rotted and fallen apart, since this seems like a layer in decline, right? So with that in mind, let's also consider that the goblins live here, and they're filthy, yucky goblins. So maybe that'll play into some of this stuff. So when we're building this dungeon, I think what we can agree on is that the number of rooms that we're going to have, we could, build a gigantic dungeon with tons and tons of rooms, but that sort of starts to fall apart when we start playing it. So what I'm thinking what we'll do is I'm going to roll 2d4. I'm going to add 2, and that's how many rooms we'll have for the first floor. Then we'll sort of idea bubble this out, and we'll make it more cohesive over time. So to begin, we have 1, 2, so we have 5 rooms on the first floor. Okay, so this ground level floor is going to have 5 rooms to it. The upper story that we're going to have, okay, so same general rule. Let's go ahead. We'll do 2d4 plus 2. So the basement will have 7 rooms, and the upstairs, because it's going to be pretty much the equal size, 7. So 9 up top. That's interesting. So now that we've got this rough idea here of how we're going to have the 5 rooms on the ground floor, let's start thinking about what the ground floor would actually have to it. Considering the ground floor is going to be sort of a meeting hall sort of thing, I'm thinking that our ground floor is probably going to have like an entry foyer, right? So that's going to be room 1. And then off of here, we'll probably want to have something of a dining area. They're going to be ogres, so it's going to be big, right? So this will be room number 2. I'll even erase the foyer part. And then that'll be that. There'll be a kitchen in room number 3. And then this is not going to be the actual layout. This is kind of the rough idea. And then I'll make a pretty one using one of my map making softwares, and I'll show you guys the finished product. So room number 4, we can say that this would be something of like a barracks, right? Something of an area for that. So for room number 4 over here, we'll say that that's a barracks, or maybe it'll be like a storage for all the troops' gear. It'll be an armory, right? And then 5 we can have be the barracks. Okay, so here's a rough idea of that. And then now we'll do the underground. Now the underground's probably going to be a little bit more loopy. So in that case, let's go ahead and figure out what that's going to look like. I think because we've got a layer here, we should at least have a treasury, right? I think that beyond the treasury, we should also have maybe servants' quarters. I think we should also have a storage area where they're going to keep all their stuff. I think that it would make sense also to have like a kennel. I think it would make sense if we also had something of a latrine / waste area, which, considering that it's going to be ogres, I don't imagine they do well cleaning that up. Area number 6, I'm imagining we might also have a jail or some sort of area for the captives. And then maybe number 7, what we can say is that they'll have something of an altar. I don't picture them being particularly reverent to their gods or anything, but I think that it'd be cool if we had something like that set up. Let's go ahead. Here, I'll actually tidy this up. All right. So now we can sort of figure out our second floor here. I'm imagining we'll probably have some towers. So I'll just put that in like that. I imagine we'll also have our leaders' quarters, the sort of the king's quarters, whatever you want to call it. Additionally, I think we're also probably going to have room for maybe, I don't know, ogres don't strike me as having, or giants in general don't strike me as having too many magic users among their ranks. So as much as I think a court wizard's room or a library or anything like that makes sense, I'm going to say we'll probably have a trophy room before that. I think we should also include something of an elite troop area, maybe like high regard troops would have their own barracks or something like that. Additionally, I think that we can probably have secondary barracks upstairs. Not that I think that, we need to fill out the rest of these 9 rooms, but I think that that would also make some sense. Maybe we could also have like a gatehouse overhang. Something of like where a murder hole might be, you know what I mean? Something that looks over the passage down below. Additionally, maybe we can have a secondary guard post. Another one, maybe we could have a meeting area. Again, the fact that it's ogres, I don't know how many formal meetings they would be having, but you know how that goes. And perhaps the last room? For the last room, it's hard to say what we could have for this last one. Maybe what we could have here is sort of another hall. I know that sounds like filler, but with this many rooms, I think that's okay for us. So this doesn't necessarily mean that all these rooms will be the final form of them, or that they'll look like this exactly. I don't imagine a lot of this stuff will survive generations of the ogres not being there. Even though there's a few left, I don't imagine that all these rooms will have their original luster and original design. So with all this being written out, I think now I can go ahead and whip up a quick map, and I'll come back to you guys in a second and show you the map. I whipped something up pretty quick here, so don't judge it, but I'm using Dungeon Scroll, which is pretty straightforward. I whipped this up in about 20 minutes or so. So what I made right here is just the first layer of the dungeon, sort of the ground level, where I included the small entryway here, probably murder holes in the ceiling and all that good stuff. Right here would be the entryway. We have something of a throne room in room number 4. In number 3, we would have our armory or the small guard post. 5 would be one of the barracks with a stairwell that connects to the secondary barracks upstairs. 6 would be the mess hall. 7 would be the kitchen. I like my ogres to be sort of like Warhammer ogres, where they're just so very hungry. So next we have our second floor, where number 2 here would be the murder hole / guard post area, sort of defensive outpost. Number 1 would be that main hall that comes from the main area downstairs, with 4 being the elite guard barracks, number 3 being the regular barracks, the stairs leading downstairs to the initial barracks area. Number 5, I figured, could be something of a meeting hall. Number 6 could be perhaps a trophy room of some sort or something like that. 7, I imagine, being the royal chambers of the high ogre here, the lord ogre, whatever the heck his name is. Probably Kagrumar, if I had to guess. Number 8, I was thinking that we could have this chamber maybe be another trophy room or something like that. Number 9 as well. When I was making this, I'm thinking to myself that a lot of these chambers would probably be just an excuse to go up to the roof, to the towers, and I'm sure there'd be other stairwells leading up. So maybe we can actually do a little practice with Dungeon Scroll right now and just go ahead and make some of these little stairwells that go up. I keep getting this notification about the cloud save timing out, so bear with me. But yeah, and I'm thinking that these little joint spots going up to the roof would probably be pretty accessible for people, or I guess ogres in this situation, going up to the towers on the roof. So now the last section that I have is the underground section. This area being the one with a stairwell that connects from the main floor. I'm thinking that we would just have stairs underneath this initial stairwell that go directly underground as well. I don't know how much I trust the architecture of ogres, but I'm imagining there's a lot of stonework, so, what could go wrong? So coming down here to room number 1, we're going to have sort of the entry hallway. 2 is the servants' quarters. 3 is a waste room where they're going to keep all the garbage and I guess maybe extra food. 4 would be kennels. 5, an altar room. 6 would be the prison, which I guess is probably where they get a lot of their food. 7 could be sort of a dry storage or a main storage area, and then 8 would be something of a treasury where I'm sure a couple of ogres would be hiding out. Now, this is all going to get converted quite a bit over time, considering the goblins are living in here. The ogres are probably all pretty well died off. So I'm imagining a lot of these things are going to be shifted over time, and I'm going to be checking the sandbox generator to see what we're going to be doing to fill this place up with traps and monsters and treasures, etc. But right now, why don't you come join me back at the table again as we discuss what's going to happen next. We've had quite of an interesting little situation here. Our party have traveled across the hills, which doesn't sound like that was a very difficult journey, but it sure felt like it considering the danger they almost ran into. But considering that the party made it over here to the Keep of Kagramar, the dungeon we just set up here, it seems like our next episode of the show, our intrepid heroes are going to be trying to do something about getting to the bottom of thwarting the goblins and probably finding out how true the rumors of the ogres being here really are. It seems like the next episode is going to be something more of a dungeon crawl, which is going to be fun, but I'm sure we're going to learn very quickly how much the party need to hightail it and get back home. Hopefully we can find some gold, so at least buy ourselves some time to chill at the tavern and recuperate, maybe buy some better gear, but who knows what's going to happen next. I just wanted to say thank you all again for coming and joining me here in the dungeon of my basement to play this game with me. It's been an interesting time making 3 episodes of this show so far, and I gotta admit, I really like doing this kind of formatting. I'm really enjoying the stress that comes along with running this kind of solo game over video, and I hope you'll all join in next time, tune in, and see where we end up. So, thank you.